Welcome back, mommies. It is the moment back here again. Today on the show, of course, we are talking about the fallout from the shooting at the White House Correspondents Dinner and Trump's response. It's been bananas. Then we both watched it so you don't have to. We watched the Euphoria wedding episode. We've been watching Euphoria. We have lots of thoughts, per usual. Then later, we're going inside the Dilley Detention Center with Texas Representative Joaquin Castro. We're so excited. Lots to talk about today. And if you want to join the conversation, please follow us on YouTube because that's the only place we can see comments as you go. If you have questions for the representative, if you have questions for us, if you have comments, if you want to join the chat. Ooh, only two I need. We love you, Quimby.
You're all I need to get by.
We're like so middle-aged. Only middle-aged women break out into song at the level that we do. But so come in, drop your comments. We love to see it. Let's talk about the fallout from the White House Correspondents Dinner because that shit was bananas. I was sitting on my couch and I saw it come in through the Citizen app, which is actually so much faster than everything else somehow. If you were, under a rock, there was a shooter at the White House Correspondents' Dinner over the weekend. If you don't know the White House Correspondents' Dinner, it's like nerd prom in DC. It's the White House Press Association gets together every year, has this dinner that is like a gala and fundraiser for journalism and the free press. The president tends to come. This is the first time the president has come in a long time. And there was I think 10 minutes into it, a shooter, no one was hurt, but everybody was pretty rattled and there's been a lot of fallout from it. Trump was shuttled away to the White House, gave a press briefing right after. I think he was really bummed that he didn't get to this is like his dream to sit in front of the press and roast them, to be like a master of ceremonies. He wants to do the event in 30 days, but let's talk a little bit. Oh, there's JD Vance getting ushered out. There's all sorts of questions about whether Secret Service did what they were supposed to do, about security there, about whether this was staged, which I thoroughly believe was not.
I thoroughly believe it was not too. And people keep writing into me and asking me, I don't think it was staged. I do not underestimate how I think one of the things I think people underestimate about Trump is, and the people around him, is how difficult they are and how unfamiliar they are with living in a world with Secret Service around them. If you think about somebody like a George W. Bush, he was so familiar with how Secret Service worked by the time he got into office, whether it be from, his own roles or his dad. And so one of the things that I think has happened with Trump and this administration is that Trump is an asshole. And I think he just says to them, I'm not doing that. I think it's probably more so than any other president in recent history, a push and pull constantly of protecting him. And then he gets mad at them. Yeah. So I'm not surprised if security was more lax because they're all just such pains in the asses.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, so I think that also this has now become a thing about the ballroom. This has become a reason.
Meghan McCain. Have you seen Meghan McCain? She's like, build the ballroom, build the. It's girl, remember what he said about your dad? I love how quickly we forget.
Yeah, they've made this about the ballroom, of course, which, by the way, is ridiculous because, as a reminder, the White House Correspondents' Dinner is not a presidential event.
It's never in the ballroom.
It's
it was never in the White House.
It was never in the White House. It was never going to be in the White House because it is the president is invited by the White House Press Association. So, there's going to be ballroom, and now suddenly it becomes the Trump, the Trump administration's White House Correspondents' Dinner. Yeah, he's the master of pivoting things to make them exactly what he wants. I have a feeling this is going to work totally in his favor. But let's talk very quickly. The suspect who's now been charged with attempted assassination is 31-year-old Cole Allen. He's from here in California, Torrance, which is close by to us. He left a manifesto calling himself his friendly neighborhood assassin, which Norah O'Donnell read in part to Trump on 60 Minutes on Sunday. And I thought this was really interesting. Let's play a brief part of this clip and talk about it.
Manifesto is a stunning thing to read, Mr. President. He appears to reference a motive in it. He writes this, quote, administration officials, they are targets. And he also wrote this, I am no longer willing to permit a pedophile, rapist, and traitor to coat my hands with his crimes. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I was waiting for you to read that because I knew you would, because you're horrible people, horrible people. Yeah, he did write that. I'm not a rapist. I didn't rape anybody.
Do you think he was referring to you?
Excuse me. I'm not a pedophile. You read that crap from some sick person.
All right.
Okay, let's be clear.
I got associated with
about Pete Hegseth, okay? And so I think the fact that Trump, you automatically think it's about you, tells us everything we need to know. But I also think he just doesn't even know how to respond in this moment to this. So he just flips in and be like, how dare you read that? I mean, the other thing that I've found really interesting about this whole thing is I did a video about this, but the way that the women have been responding, whether it be Rachel Campos Duffy, Katie Miller, Cheryl Hines, they're like, oh, what a night. That was crazy. And I'm like, you guys, it's not like somebody needed the Heimlich. Y'all were almost pew-pewed. That wasn't that. Also, too, the thing that I think that was different about that is I don't think that was necessarily, I'm going to assassinate the president. I don't know if I should say that on here, but I don't know if I'm going to, the president. I think that was more of, I'm going to, the ballroom.
Yes.
And so if that happened to me, I don't think that the next day I would be putting up a photo of me and my husband with the Michael Jackson song "Wanna Be Starting Something."
Oof. I gotta be honest. This whole thing gave me like the ick from the fact that like this dinner is still occurring when the administration is attacking the First Amendment at every turn. And we can talk about how this, has gone to Jimmy Kimmel, to the fact that like, what we should be talking about here is this is somebody who clearly had some sort of mental break, radicalized on the internet, feeling things that perhaps I'm feeling in my personal life, but like don't, act on. And then we live in a country with a ton of guns, with easy access to guns. And in this situation,
Just
because, sorry, pew-pews. And the fact that this conversation then becomes about, oh, we need a ballroom, oh, we need more security. Like, do fourth graders need a ballroom? Is that the solution to pew-pew violence in our culture? Like, I don't know, something about this really irks me that this is how the conversation went. And I felt like, so with Norah O'Donnell, I was listening to the Pod Save Bros this morning, and they were criticizing her for bringing this up to him the day after, for like reading this.
Why?
They were like doing the thing where it's like there's no place for political violence, and I mean, I don't,
but like it already happened.
It already happened, and like this is her job. This is her job. Like. Also,
if there's no place for political violence, let's talk about what's happening in Dilley. Let's talk about what's happening in Iran. Let's talk about what's happening in Gaza.
Bleeding out in parking lots because they can't.
That's all political violence. Those Pod Save Bros, honestly, sometimes they can go take a motherfucking hike. They're still nursing their hangovers from being at the Crooked Con party.
Yes,
which I would have been honored to attend.
No, but like seriously, I feel like it's so craven, this whole thing. And I think especially in the context of like, this is her job. It was in his manifesto. Like, this is the reason that this person came to attack you. And I also think like she's been criticized. She was criticized for her last interview with Trump. And I agree. She didn't go hard enough at him and CBS in general. And it's like, okay, yeah, this is what she's supposed to do. So anyways.
Also, wait, look, can we just say one more thing?
Please.
They were hoping that the letter would be like, as a trans person, I am da 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 da. Like they were like, oh, I think it all depends what's in the letter of how they feel about it. So if that letter had made like the radical left look like, it's about trans and women need rights, they'd be like reading that everywhere.
Yes.
But because it was sort of like, you guys are XYZ and it kind of looks like you are, it doesn't bode well for them.
Yeah, the whole thing, it's just like, it's all optics and pivoting and who wants what and power games. And like, I don't know, I'm sick of it. I'm sick of the ways the press play into it. I'm sick to see that like this event is going on. I understand that the money, it's sort of like the Met Gala where it's like the money goes towards journalistic, scholarships, and like that's all well and good, but like be so fucking for real right now.
Can you imagine if that had happened when Obama was at the White House Correspondents Dinner. I mean, I think like that's the thing that's become so crazy is that like you're kind of like, oh wow, there was an active shooter at the White House Correspondents Dinner and the president was there. That's wild.
Yeah.
But like if that had happened 15 years ago,
Oh, it would have been
like,
yeah.
oh my God.
Totally.
We would have been talking about it for the next 2 years.
Yeah.
But
You know what was interesting?
Yeah.
I saw a picture. Erica Kirk was there.
Of course she was.
Of course she was. And I saw a picture of her being ushered out. And I was like, that's the first time I've seen like an emotion that I believe on her face. She looked really distraught. She looked really upset. She was like, I just want to go home. And I can imagine like this was, you know, I'm sure this is like super PTSD, but I was like, that's what.
How about my girl Karoline? She's so pregnant. And she's up at the front and, you know, Secret Service comes in and they grab Trump and they grab JD Vance and Caroline's like, she's on her own. Like she's ducking under the table. And then the next day she has to be like, oh, wow, that was hilarious. But like as a human, when I see that happen to another human, even though I'm not a big fan of Caroline's and people are probably going to get mad at me for this, like I was like, that's really crappy.
Yeah.
Like she's so pregnant and she's just like ducking under the table. And I don't know. I just think it's like we don't care. And that's also how Secret Service is supposed to operate.
Yes,
Like they're
yes.
not supposed to like cover the other people, but still.
She was supposed to be on maternity leave. Friday was supposed to be her last day in the press room, and then she had to. But before we turn our subjects, let's talk about then Melania comes out. And Melania's like, I don't know, all of a sudden she's a little bit feisty. She's a little bit out there. And they're like playing all their old favorites. She called for Jimmy Kimmel to be fired by ABC. He made a joke on Thursday night, so before the White House Correspondents Dinner. And like, I'll be honest, I find Jimmy Kimmel to be distasteful for a lot of reasons. But he made a joke saying like what he would do if he were giving the White House Correspondents Dinner. And he said, Mrs. Trump, you have the glow like an expectant widow, which like, in retrospect, you know, given what happened, is distasteful. She's called for him to be fired. Trump echoed that. It seems like old favorites to me, you know, like they're just playing the old tunes.
I mean, then what's the point of the White House Correspondents Dinner? Isn't it about freedom of speech? Like,
yeah.
Also to Trump, he didn't mean that like you were going to get pew-pewed. He meant that you're going to die because you like eat so much McDonald's. That's not like, that wasn't the bit. The bit was not about that. And I just think it's like any time that they can, this White House Correspondents Dinner thing actually is really not good for them in general. I think, and so anytime they can take the optics and move them to Kimmel, you're right.
Totally.
It's the old favorites. So I don't know. I think we'll just they're not gonna fire Jimmy Kimmel, but also too, it's like, how much longer is Kimmel even gonna be on? Like late night is dying in such a way that it's
so
like
funny. I had this thought. I was like, this is the most boomer. It's like the press in this specific way is dying. Anyways, before we get to our guest today, speaking of gratuitous violence,
speaking of almost dying,
let's talk about Euphoria. You know,
it jumped the shark for me last night or 2 nights ago. You know, I've loved Euphoria.
Oh, okay.
I loved the first and second season. And even these first couple episodes, I've been like, yeah, I think like they were entertaining me. I don't think they were as good, but I also think like a time jump and all these things that happened, whatever. But then last night's episode was the wedding of Cassie and Nate. And I don't know what it is for me, but even from like the moment that it started, I was like, this is where the show has become not like a show anymore, because it's become marketing.
100%.
Because one of the things that was happening around this episode specifically is that they've been marketing it like as sort of similar to that movie, The Drama. They've been marketing it as like the wedding of Cassie and Nate, and it becomes less about the actual show and like the good writing and the beautiful cinematography and more about like just like, I don't even know, like more commercialized.
Yes.
I think. And
it's like, what are people going to watch after this? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like this was sort of like the climax of the first 2 seasons.
Well, and also too, it's like, I was thinking about this morning. I'm like, there's just like no good TV anymore. Like they're really,
that's why I've been rewatching Mad Men.
Right. Exactly. Well, that's what I was thinking. It's like, and guess what? No one's greenlighting anything like Mad Men anymore. If you came in and were like, hey, I've got a sort of a slow drama about 1960s advertising, they'd be like, I'm going to push you out of the window here in Century City.
Have you heard of AI fruit slop?
Right. Exactly. But the culmination of this episode was there was a ton of violence. And it really made me uncomfortable. And I just think that, like, I don't think there's any coming back from this episode for this show.
It was also just like gratuitous violence. So
Right.
I loved the first season of Euphoria. I think it introduced us to a slate of Gen Z actors. Like the Gen Z actors who are sort of like A-list now really got introduced to us from this show. It was, about this like dark underbelly of Gen Z figuring themselves out. And slowly, maybe not that slowly, like the actual writing of the show has gone away. It's all just the shock factor.
Yeah.
And I feel like shock factor, like Quentin Tarantino, I'm not like a huge fan, but like
That's hard for him because he's one of our number one listeners, but it's something he needed to
fan
hear.
Of the moment.
Yeah.
But Quentin Tarantino, so Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, for example, it's like 2 hours of storytelling that isn't violent, that is like just like exploring Hollywood during the 1970s and these characters. And then right at the end, there's like extreme violence. And it's like this shocking sort of like exciting thing at the end. Like it kind of makes sense, like story in terms of storytelling. And here, all of the violence, I'm like, why? Why did you do that? Our girl Annabelle is saying Hacks is amazing. I haven't started it yet.
I need to start the new season. I'll watch Hacks and that'll be great. Like that's,
it's a fun one.
But and I also think like Sydney Sweeney's character, they have done this girl no favors. I'm like, they hate her because like she actually like has had more dimension in the first 2 seasons than she does now.
Do you know what I heard?
What?
I don't know if this is true. This is just rumors. I heard that the Cassie storyline was actually supposed to be the Jules storyline, which is Hunter Schafer. So Nate, at season 1, Nate and Hunter Schafer, Jules, are having an affair in the background. They're falling in love. And that was supposed to be the relationship that they were going to tease out. But in real life, Hunter Schafer and Jacob Elordi had a big falling out where they no longer wanted to really do scenes together. And so they were like, oh, how do we rejigger this to make it a Cassie storyline? So in fact, it was like, it makes more sense that Jules... Yeah.
This is what I'll say. I'll give it one thing before we move on. I think, you know what? I think he should get Best Supporting Actor. Eric Dane. Who knew? He's actually really bringing it. I think he's been last night's episode. He was he was the best thing in the whole episode. You can definitely tell that he's already struggling with ALS,
for sure.
And so it definitely changes the way that his character is sort of acting and interacting. And they don't acknowledge that, which I think makes it even better. But like last night, he had an amazing scene with Jules, and then Jules had an amazing scene with Jacob Elordi. So I think like I was like, one thing I will say is like, it's very, someone passing from is always sad. Someone passing from ALS at that age, I think is like incredibly sad. But I was like, they really like let him have, I think, a moment in this episode, and it really delivered. Like it was really good.
That's a good point. I also will forever love Alana Eubank, who plays the mom. That one scene where she's like, from the windows to the wall. That was like the best part.
You know what was interesting though that made zero sense is like she's walking Cassie down the aisle and all of a sudden she becomes like so narcissistic and she's saying all these horrible things to Cassie about her first marriage to Cassie's dad. And we've never seen this side of her mom before. Like her mom's always sort of been in the background, like, hey, she kind of seems like a decent mom.
Well,
like
I always felt like she as a mom was living vicariously through Cassie.
Yes, but that was not even what we got last night. We all of a sudden got this like incredibly manipulative, like it was like, it didn't even make sure, like it didn't even go with the arc of the characters. Sure, she's sort of been living through Cassie, but she's also been like, Cassie, shut up. Like, and so I was kind of like, where is this coming from?
Who is this?
Right? So anyway, I think that was
I gotta tell you, I'm not gonna watch the rest of it. I think I'm done with Euphoria.
Okay, same.
Okay.
You know what I'm not done with? Today's episode of The Moment. We've got a fantastic guest.
I'm so excited.
So excited for this guest. We are joined by Congressman Joaquin Castro. Representative Castro represents San Antonio, Texas, the 20th district, and is currently serving his 7th term in Congress.
Wow.
He is the ranking Democrat on the House Foreign Affairs Subcommittee and sits on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. He's been a vocal critic of the administration's immigration policies and has been making repeated visits to the Dilley Detention Facility in Texas to inspect the conditions for detained children and families. We are so excited to have Rep. Castro with us today.
Hello, y'all.
Morning.
Hi.
With you.
This is a very exciting day for me because I just want to say I have now completed meeting both Castro brothers. Look at this. Castro
Well,
fan.
you're meeting the better Castro today. So I don't know when you met my brother, but you know.
Well,
Shots
he had a few
fired.
things to say about you. I'll just say that. No, I'm kidding.
Okay.
I was very active when your brother was running for president.
Yeah, of course.
And that was such an exciting time. But we're so honored to have you here today. And, both you and your brother have done so much, especially around this issue of immigration.
Yeah, you've been out there.
And I just want to get into that first. We want to focus a little bit on the Dilley Detention Center, which is right outside of your district, I believe. It's in the 21st district.
Yeah, that's right. It's about 40-minute drive. It's in rural Texas, in Dilley, Texas. And I wish that every person could go in there and see it for themselves and see how those kids are made to live. Because, it's the only place I can think of in the country where innocent children are incarcerated. When I went there the first time, I asked, what's the youngest person here? And they had to think about it for a little bit. And I guess they looked through their files or something. And they said, oh, it's a 2-month-old baby is the youngest person in that trailer prison. And so it's kind of like, just to see it is kind of a shock to the conscience. But we've kept going back. I'm going back again on Tuesday, May 5th, with a group of members of Congress. And my goal is to close it down. My goal is to get every single child out of there.
Well, I think one of the things that happened was with the case of Liam Conejo Ramos, the Dilley really took sort of like a front page in national news because this was the photo seen around the world. So you have been really instrumental in this case with Liam and his father, Adrian. And so I'm curious to know, can you give us an update on where those stand? Because of course they were released and you, I know, were a part of that, but they were released, but it's not over for the Conejo Ramos family.
Right. No, that's right. So they were released by a federal district court judge who ordered them to be released back to their home community in Minnesota, but they still have their immigration asylum case that's going through. And unfortunately, they lost the first round on that, where the judge denied their asylum claim. So they're in an appeal process. So you can imagine Liam and Adrian and the family are just very nervous about this idea that they may not be allowed to pursue asylum in the United States. And so they're just, he's very affected, Liam, at school, in just everything in his life. I think there's just so much anxiety and pressure on him right now.
Do you think that we're going to see a slew of lawsuits after all of this? Because this to me feels like child abuse.
I honestly hope that there will be accountability after all of this, because what the Trump administration is putting these kids and these families through is just incredible. But also the abuses of ICE out on the streets. I mean, we all witnessed in Minnesota the killings, the brutality, all of it, and for all of this to come from people who are wearing masks, who refuse to identify themselves, who put coverings over their license plates so nobody can know who they are. Yeah, I think there's got to be this accountability. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us as those of us that are Democrats, that do believe that this is wrong, to make sure that once we have a Democratic president, Democratic Senate, and a Democratic Congress, that we don't just let everybody move on without accountability. We need to make sure that there is accountability for this stuff.
Speaking of moving on, something that I've heard out of MAGA in general this week is because of what happened at the White House Correspondents Dinner, they're pointing out that the Secret Service is paid through DHS, and DHS funding hasn't happened because Democrats are pushing for ICE reform. Can you tell us where that stands? I feel like that was like a big news story back in February and has sort of like fallen off of our minds. Can you tell us where that is?
Yeah, I mean, look, ICE got last year $75 billion beyond its annual budget. DHS got something like $150 billion. That's beyond their annual budgets. So they're not short on money. Regardless of what the president says, they're flush with cash. Democrats have said, hey, listen, unless y'all respect constitutional rights, unless you take your masks off, unless you actually go get warrants to come into people's homes, things like that, then we're not even going to consider giving you another dime. And why would we? Not only are you flush with cash, but you're also violating people's rights. Why would we give more money for that? But by the way, John Thune in the Senate, the majority leader of the Senate, and Mike Johnson, the Republican Speaker of the House, they can't even agree on what the reconciliation bill looks like. They're fighting amongst themselves about what this is supposed to look like. Never mind Democrats. So really, the problem is on the Republican side, they can't even agree among themselves on what the bill looks like.
Mess.
One of the things that I think we can all acknowledge is that Dilley has existed for a while. It was, I believe it officially opened in 2014. I'm curious to know, why haven't we called, or, you in your role so close to Dilley, called for the closure of Dilley earlier?
Well, a few things. I had visited Dilley before, and we had been successful in getting folks out before. We had at least a few big meetings, the Congressional Hispanic Caucus meetings with President Obama back then, and made the same case. So a lot of this that you're seeing publicly now, those were conversations we were actually able to have with the president and the administration. And so there were important changes. I will also say that a lot of the things going on now under the Trump administration, those were not things that were going on under previous administrations. The denial of medical care, for example, and the way that they're doing it, the way ICE is going up to people randomly, picking them off the street, and then throwing families into the Dilley Detention Center. I mean, this is a much more aggressive, much more vicious way that ICE and DHS is carrying out their work. But I think that's part of the point that I was making before, is that when Democrats do take control of Congress and the presidency, especially, it can't just be that we're going to continue all of the things that you're seeing now. There has to be real change. There isn't a single person at Dilley who has a criminal record. Really. Wow. And I know that because ICE told me that. There isn't a single person that's got a criminal record. So I agree, whether it's a Democrat or Republican president, things have to change.
Wow, that's really interesting. I didn't realize that. One question I was reading actually in local news about a family. You mentioned the medical care part, and there's a family in Dilley who claims that they're at risk of death because of their lack of medical attention. We got a lot of attention, I think, on Dilley because Liam Conejo Ramos became such a national story. Can you tell us about this family? You've called on for them to be released. Can you tell us about this family and how is this possible? How is this possible?
Yeah, I mean, there have been a few individuals and family members whose health has gotten so bad, and really medical care has been denied or delayed in such a way that that their lives are at stake, and we've seen it happen a few times now, and so that's why when I talk about a brutality on the streets that we can see, I also mentioned that there's a brutality behind those closed prison walls, this trailer prison, that we just don't see, that most people are not able to see. There's a reason that they limit who can go into those facilities. Yeah. Even the Academy of Medicine, essentially, physicians, has written to the administration saying, hey, let us go inspect or be helpful to the people in there. And so far, they've gotten no response at all. And there's a reason for that, because there is a kind of cruelty there.
Yeah. One of the things that I'm thinking about is I know you have conversations all the time with people from across the aisle. And so I would be curious to know, what are you actually hearing from them? Because a big part of this feels like it is against the pro-life movement to be harming children in this way. So what are you actually hearing across the aisle from folks about places like Dilley?
I mean, I have heard some concern privately among Republican colleagues, but the thing is that we've come to a point where Donald Trump just so dominates the Republican Party, and my Republican colleagues, for the most part, except for maybe Representative Massey, they're so scared of him endorsing against them in their primaries that nobody's really willing to speak up or speak out in an assertive way. Which is really a shame, because a lot of this has nothing to do with left or right or Republican or Democrat. It's really just about human rights and respecting people in a basic, fundamental way. And so I hope more of them will speak up. I suspect that once Donald Trump becomes weakened, because Republicans are going to get, I think, really beaten pretty badly in the midterms, then I suspect that once he becomes a lame duck and he's cost them another election in a big way, that more people will find their footing again on the Republican side and be more critical. That's my hope, at least.
We talked a little bit about accountability, but to that end, with like the midterms coming up and hopefully a switch over to a Democratic majority in Congress and the Senate, how are you guys actually? What does accountability actually look like? Because I agree, these are human rights issues and not left versus right. But in some ways, I'm like, the American public maybe just wants to move on from this and be like, what does our future look like? How are you starting to think about, one, what accountability actually looks like? Is it bringing Kristi Noem to trial? Is it versus just moving on from this chapter? How are Democrats starting to think about that?
Well, I mean, and let me explain, when I say moving on, what happens is that traditionally Democrats have thought that immigration is a losing issue for them, or at best a break-even issue. And so it's not, when you've got a Democratic president and administration, it's often not something they want to spend a lot of time on or go all in on, because they think that Republicans are going to use it against them. So, but now under Donald Trump, there have been so many human rights abuses, so much abuse in the system, that I think people realize, well, wait a minute, we got to correct this. We got to make sure that people are held accountable. So I think it happens in two phases. Even if Democrats take back the House, which I think we will, and maybe the Senate, which we might, you still have a Republican president in Donald Trump. So the first part of this, when you've got the Congress, is very, very high profile oversight hearings. Where you do bring in people who are responsible for these policies. And you ask them a lot of tough questions about what happened, and you're able to use the subpoena power to essentially get all the other information that you need. And I think that we are going to find a lot of abuse. I think not just in terms of what ICE is doing, but also, y'all know, all this crony contracting. They're using this system to give all these billions of dollars to friends and cronies, and so, so the first part is a lot of oversight. I also think that there ought to be a special commission that's created to look into all of this ICE abuse. Robert Garcia, who I think will become the chairman from California, great member of Congress, will be an incredible chairman of that oversight committee, is doing a wonderful job. But I also think that there ought to be a special committee that handles this issue specifically, because we got to make sure that it doesn't happen again. And then finally, when you have a Democratic president that comes in, Democrats in Congress have to hold that person accountable. And I'll say it ahead of time for whoever the Democratic nominee and president becomes, so that they actually change these policies, treat people humanely, and really commit to working on real immigration reform.
It's funny you say that, because I was doing a little research into my old friend private equity, who is benefiting from this, because they do a lot of the services within these, across the board, not just Dilley, but they, on their first quarter, summary, were like, listen, little bit of a weak start in January, but the good news is because of the increase in people in ICE detention facilities, we're going to see a better return this spring. And it's just like, oh my God, they say the quiet part out loud when you really start to scratch the surface. Going back just for a second to actually being at Dilley, because I really, you're one of the people who's been there, boots on the ground. Is there a certain thing that you just wish every single American could see in that space?
I mean, I wish that people could see the desperation in those kids' eyes. To see those young kids, whether they're 5 years old or 7 years old, some of them, sobbing, obviously traumatized by what's happening, and also not understanding what they did wrong to end up in a place like that. And then to see the parents, my wife and I have 3 kids, and your kids kind of see you as a protector. They kind of see you as all powerful when they're young. And this idea that you're invincible and you can protect them from everything. And to see that facade, melt away in the kids, and the parents realizing that to their kids, they're no longer those omnipotent parents who can protect them, but are reduced to these prisoners, being these prisoners in front of them, is as a parent is just heartbreaking to see. But I think if most Americans saw what was going on in there, they wouldn't support it.
I'm thinking a little bit about the fact that it's almost the summer and it's probably going to get really hot there too. Like I would imagine that the air conditioning system at Dilley is not like
dangerous,
doing anyone any favors.
Yeah. And it's 12 people per room. I mean, they put 12 people per room. They mix up families. I mean, it's literally trailers with like these steel graded floors that you're walking on. Every time you walk through this hallway that's got, these units where people are sleeping, literally when you walk, it's like a boom, boom, boom. I honestly don't know how anybody sleeps in there. So it's just meant to be very harsh and very punitive for folks who literally have not committed any crime at all.
How do you think the people in Dilley feel about this? Like in the community of Dilley and around it, feel about having this be sort of what everybody knows their community for?
Yeah, I was having a conversation with somebody, I won't say who exactly, but part of the official Dilley community, right? And they said, we tried so hard to build Dilley up as a town and to get it a good name, and never thought that we would be known for this. It's a small town in Texas, and the people of the town are great people. And there's been like a lot of, and I get it, like a lot of anger about the people that take jobs there and that are part of the system. And I get that. But I've said that, if you're mad at these folks for taking an $18 an hour job, then I hope that you're mad at Core Civic and the private equity funds that are not making $18 an hour. They're making hundreds of millions of dollars or billions of dollars off of the warehousing of kids. You think about what that means. Like, we've decided as a country to allow for the commodifying of child imprisonment in the United States, such that you have Core Civic and the larger, major asset managers who own stakes in them, basically putting out these statements to their shareholders about, hey, yeah, it's going to be a great quarter because they're going to put more kids in there in Dilley, and so, which is basically what they're saying, right? Like, yeah, we're going to warehouse, Trump's going to warehouse more people for us, so we're going to make more money off of all of this. It really is grotesque.
By the way, kids, I'm making a video about that soon, and I am not going to hold back. So I will be showing the people behind this private equity firm too, because their faces are on the website.
Before you head out, people are asking in the comments specifically, what can Texans do to help or volunteer? Like, how can Texans who are horrified by this join the fight?
Well, there's these folks have commissaries that folks can contribute to. Some of the folks are still unrepresented. They have no legal representation. So certainly help for their legal representation. That's one of the biggest factors in terms of whether somebody has a shot at getting out in a reasonable amount of time and, being able to pursue their asylum claim in the United States, for example, is whether they have a lawyer. If you're over there, whether it's Dilley or Carnes or the adult facilities like Carnes and Pearsall and so forth, and you don't have an attorney, which is a good number of people, I mean, you're languishing. You're in limbo because there's some terrible stories out of the adult facilities as well of people also who did nothing wrong that are suffering.
Well, Representative Joaquin Castro, we are so grateful for you being here. We're grateful to see you coming in and out of Dilley. You've been such a champion, and we hope to have you back soon.
Thank you. Great to see y'all.
Bye.
Bye, Rep Castro.
Wow. Yeah. It's heavy. Whenever I hear about this, I'm like, I have a flash into the future when I'm an old woman, and I'm like so deeply ashamed. Like when
Why?
Like when we're like, as a country, we are going to have to explain this to our children.
We were up at 7 in the morning trying to make the conversation happen.
No, of course. I mean, like, it's not on us personally, but like it is a deep shame that we as a country are doing this to children. He made such a good point about the fact that, like, nobody in Dilley has a criminal record. This is not the worst. Like it is just inhumane. I don't know. Every time we talk about it, I'm like, this is just such a blotch.
We should go.
Yeah, we should go. I know. We've been actually, for
Maybe-
those of you watching behind the scenes, we've been talking about how we can do that.
Working on trying to go. And shout out to our friend Corey Sullivan Martin, who is an attorney who has been working with families there and working closely with Rep Castro's team, and she has gotten a lot of folks out of Dilley, but it continues. She was there this week.
Wow, unbelievable!
So how do we move on?
How do we
move on?
That's the question of I think on all of
don't.
us. Like that's what I was sort of also trying to ask him is like how do we hold accountability? Like in my head, I'm like, this is like a Nuremberg trial situation.
Well, that's the same thing. I'm the judge and the jury. He makes me proud to live here. It's hard to find hope out here. Yeah, I think it's like, what's so funny is like, I have to say, I think maybe because I just consume so much of it, but like it at this point, I don't know if I've become numb. Like it doesn't depress me as much as it used to, because like I'm just like, there are good people out there. There are people who are trying and working and helping. And like, we need to like, okay, when we do have somebody else in office, like, how can we do this differently?
Yeah,
because it wasn't working. Well, what's having a moment for you?
Well, I was gonna. Can I do two moments? I'm gonna do one moment. Did you ever see the show? I think it's called A Small Light. It was on Hulu and Disney Plus.
No,
it was about the woman who hid Anne Frank's family.
Oh, yes, I did.
Yeah, it was fabulous. It was so good.
Yes, it's so good.
And it reminds me of what you're saying is like, there will be a moment where like, yes, there's a lot of darkness, there's a lot of shame, but there are good people and
totally
they're in all the small places.
I watched that and I thought, and I don't say this.
Yeah.
I was like, she kind of reminds me of me.
I get it. I totally get it.
She's a fucking live wire, that woman in the show.
Yeah. And I believe that this is how you would act in that situation as well.
I'd like to think that I would be that brave, but I just remember like even watching just like how she would like interact with people before
totally get
things
it.
even go really south.
Yes.
She's like a fucking menace.
Yes. Yes, a type.
It's a great show. It's a beautiful show too. It's beautifully shot.
It's just the whole thing is beautiful, and we hear the Anne Frank story so much from
the
like
perspective
rightfully
of Anne Frank and
yes.
her family, and right.
But I felt like this was such a, and anyways, just like to your point of like there are good people out there. But my other moment is this article that I was reading in the New York Times about Sergey Brin, who.
Who's that?
Sergey Brin is one of the wealthiest men in the world. He is one of the founders of Google.
Okay.
Who was like a liberal champion through the Obama years. And now he's dating a like MAGA influencer who's like ultra MAGA. And he's like moved to the right, and he's put 57, I believe that's the number, $57 million towards pushing against this California billionaires tax. And I just like, it's a great article. It's in the New York Times. It's about Sergey Brin, how he's gone from left to right, and how he's using this, I think it's a $273 billion wealth. He has hundreds of billions of dollars. He would be taxed 5% on this California billionaires tax. So it would be $1 billion effectively.
Move or get over it.
Also,
like all the money you've put behind it.
Exactly.
You probably also 57 million is not even that much.
Well, it's like, but that's exactly right. It's like he's put 57 million towards fighting against this billionaire's tax. It's a one-time 5% tax.
Oh, I'm familiar.
Yes, exactly. And anyways, it's just a fascinating article to me because like, I don't know, these people are, it's just such loser energy. You're like, there's so much money here. You have literally more money than every generation after you could possibly spend. And the problem is that you don't want 5% going back into the public system. And so you're spending money that could otherwise...
I give to nonprofits.
Yeah, right? Like it's... Anyways, I just thought this article was fascinating and worth a read. It's like, some articles are so dry, but this is like such a great character study too. What's having a moment for you?
So I am listening to the audiobook, so don't at me, of Emma Grede's book, Start With
Ooh.
Yourself. And this is going to be a very controversial take here on the moment.
Spicy.
But I really enjoy it. I think it's really interesting. I know she's got a big Kardashian connection, but I think there's great advice in it. And it's like, if I knew someone who was graduating from college this year, I'd be like, this is a great book to read because it is not, if you actually read it, and this is what I've been hearing people say, they're like, everyone who's coming out and like harping on this book has not read it because it is,
as it usually is.
Well, yes, but it's not a girl boss book. It is not telling you to girl boss. It is definitely got more grit than some other things, and it definitely pushes back against like, I don't know, some of the like sort of age of like self-care and I don't want to say that, but like basically what she's saying is like, life is trade-offs. You got to figure out the fucking trade-offs and you got to roll with it. And you can't guilt yourself too much, but she's also not saying you can have it all. And that's where I think it's like, that's not the Sheryl Sandberg. It's not lean in. It's not just work harder. It's more like there's certain things that are going to work. There's certain things you're good at. And it's been making me think a lot about like what I'm good at and what I force myself to try to do that I could maybe outsource.
Oh,
like,
interesting.
And so I think it's a really helpful, powerful book. And I also think that it gives like permissions for moms to like not be all things.
Yep.
And I also think it's really easy when you're that wealthy to kind of like, I think one of the differences is like, it's like, okay, for some people, she's like, it's okay if you don't drop your kids off at school every day. But for, I think a lot of moms, it's like, right. But like, I can't pay someone to do it. So like, that's where we're different. And so I don't know that she always acknowledges that. But I also think the other thing about this book, and this is like across the board with a lot of these sort of like, I'll call this self-help just for sake of the argument. Not every single thing in it you're going to agree with.
Right.
Like, and I think we've become such an all or nothing culture that people are like, well, I don't like that she said XYZ one thing. And I'm like, I don't know.
Skip it.
There's like, don't skip it. Like, take what you like and leave the rest.
Yeah.
And so there is some good, valuable stuff in there. So I'm enjoying it.
I saw a clip of her. I haven't read the book.
People
yet.
are asking what book, guys. The book is called Start With Yourself by Emma Grede, and
she's on like a big press tour right now. I'm seeing a lot of her.
I'd love to have her on the show, and
I'd love to have her.
This
on the
is
show.
the other thing too. It's like, I will give her credit. Not a Nepo baby.
Definitely not a Nepo baby. So I saw a clip of her, and I thought this was really interesting, is she made the point, like, yes, women do not get enough venture capital. Like, women are way, 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 way underinvested in, and there's a lot of systemic reasons for that. And she acknowledged that. And then she also said, interestingly, though, research shows that men are more likely to pitch with numbers and profits, and women are more likely to pitch with purpose and meaning. And investors are more likely to put money into something where they can see the clear payoff than into purpose. And I thought that was really interesting because I lead with purpose a lot in the things that I do. And sometimes it feels frustrating. And I just thought that was a really interesting, like, yes, there is.
But that's what I mean. It's like, that's actually helpful for you to know. And so it's like, if we just vilify someone for being like, oh, she said she only spends 3 hours a day with her kids. And it's also like, when I really think about my childhood and think about how much time I actually spent with my mom like when I was like 6, I mean, it was probably more like 5 hours, but like 2 of them were fucking awful. like 2 of them were her like ripping the hairbrush through my hair, screaming at me, hairbrush, use less conditioner. Like, I mean, so like, if you outsource 2 of those bad hours, good for fucking you. My mom and I would have been a lot better off.
There you go. Okay, everybody. We love doing this show so much.
Love it. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube. If you want to play in the comments, you got to be on the YouTube. It's linked in my bio. If you're watching this on TikTok, I need you to, when it ends, you're going to go over, you're going to follow this on YouTube.
We're also going to do some specials on YouTube specifically.
Guys, we have like a couple of things coming up, but we're doing a special with, I'm just going to say, we're doing a special with Julie Klausner.
So fun.
Like, hello.
So fun.
Yes.
Go to themomentshow.com. It will take you directly to the YouTube. If you want to be part of helping us grow a show for women, by women, about the things that women care about, please subscribe and join us back here on Friday.
Yeah. Who's coming on? We'll see.
We'll see.
Bye.
Bye.